So House Speaker Nancy Pelosi reacting earlier today after the Archbishop of San Francisco banned her from receiving communion in her home parish because of her pro-choice stand on abortion.
I wonder about the death penalty, which I am opposed to. So is the church, but they take no action against people who may not share their view.
Jonathan Morris is a theologian and Fox News contributor, and it's great to have you with us. Jonathan, good morning to you. You know, what do you make of Nancy Pelosi's argument there, first of all, that that the death penalty is not, you know, people are not withheld from communion for their stance on the death penalty?
It's a straw man argument because there's no legislator in even the state of California, nonetheless in her Archdiocese of San Francisco, who's proposing greater laws in favor of the death penalty. But what her Archbishop, Cordileone, is doing right now is saying, actually, it's my responsibility, if you're in my Archdiocese and you're proclaiming to be a practicing Catholic, if you are publicly going to communion, and communion also entails being in communion, in agreement with the church's major teachings, right, on faith and morals, I have to tell you, you shouldn't be doing that. And he has tried over and over again to do this in a private way, saying, please, just either don't call yourself a practicing Catholic and saying that this is actually good, or stop promoting those things.
Well, obviously, just two quick points here, if I may. I mean, obviously, because of what's going on with Roe v. Wade, this is an issue that I think the church is now put in a position where they need to take a strong stand on it and to explain to people what the stance is. On the other, just one quick thought on this argument about the death penalty. It seems to me that Nancy Pelosi is acknowledging that the comparison is life. Right to life.
That's right.
Because she's saying, you know, you can't withhold communion from someone who's pro-death penalty. Well, then in my mind, you're equating that to abortion, which would be the question of the right to live.
You're absolutely right. And let's use another example. And I wonder what Nancy Pelosi would think about this. What if there is a legislator who is saying, I'm in favor, I'm a Catholic, or let's say I'm part of the United Methodist Church, and I am in favor of laws that would bring slavery back. Would the head of the United Methodist Church, should that leader say, hey, do whatever you want? Or should they say, no, don't call yourself a member of the United Methodist Church if you're promoting slavery. You can't do it. And that's exactly what's happening in San Francisco. The Archbishop is saying, Nancy Pelosi, choose what you wish. Do you want to be a practicing Catholic or do you not? And if you want to be a practicing Catholic, stop doing something that goes directly against a major tenet of the faith, protecting life.
Well, Whoopi weighed in. And so Whoopi Goldberg, let's listen to what she said.
This is not your job, dude. That is not up to you to make that decision. You know, what is the saying? It's kind of amazing. But, you know, what is the point of communion, right? It's for sinners. It's for sinners. It's the reward of saints, but the bread of sinners. How dare you?
So she says that that is not his job, but I'm Lutheran, not Catholic, but I was reading this morning that that is actually his job.
Yeah, she's saying it's not the Archbishop's job to determine who can go to communion or not. Now, Whoopi is right that, hey, communion is not for all for saints, it's for all of us. But it is the job, it's actually in the job title of an archbishop. It's part of his main responsibilities to teach the faith and be a guardian of the sacraments, to make sure that the sacraments are not being abused and turned into a political thing. What Nancy Pelosi is doing is politicizing her faith by saying, actually, I'm right. And I'm going to go against my faith and say that it's actually with my faith. That's, I think, terrible leadership on the part of Nancy Pelosi. I would also say that Pope Francis has a responsibility here. The bishops are being left in a very hard position. He needs to say, if canon law gives responsibility to the bishops to be guardian of the sacraments, well, then they should be encouraged to do that, or else canon law should be changed. Right? And so Pope Francis has some responsibility here, too.
Great to see you. A wonderful guest on this.
Great to see you, Jonathan. Thanks for coming in.